You are listening to Exploring Clean Energy, where we uncover the ideas, innovations, and projects powering our sustainable future. I'm Andy Marsland. Welcome to the show. I'm thrilled to welcome our guest today, Corbin Luther, who is the e-mobility solution specialist for Volvo Australia. So a very warm welcome.
Thanks for having me, mate.
Yeah, thanks for being on the Exploring Clean Energy podcast. I'm sure the audience will know all about Volvo as an organisation, but could you just break that down as in terms of Volvo Australia and particularly your area of focus, Volvo Trucks?
Yep. So Volvo Group globally is trucks, bus, Penta, like the marine engines and construction equipment. And there's a bunch of other smaller bits and pieces to that. Outside of trucks, obviously, I'm not too interested in the other stuff that we do. But in Australia, we have all of those main divisions. In Australia, that is both Volvo Trucks and Mack Trucks as well. So that Mack became part of the Volvo business, I think, in 2001. Those two factories here in Brisbane were combined in 2002. So both Volvo and Mack trucks that you see on the roads here in Australia, all the big ones anyway, all the Macks and then all the bigger Volvos. So like your garbage trucks that go past your house, those are not built in Australia. But all of the bigger stuff that you see on the highways, all built in Australia, here in Brisbane at a factory at a Wacol.
Oh, fantastic.
So if not the biggest, it's us and the other guys down in Victoria that are, depending on the year, who's the biggest heavy vehicle manufacturer in Australia. But manufacturing is not dead here in Australia. And the exciting thing is electric is coming soon for that factory as well. So currently the electrics come from overseas.
Okay, yeah, and we can dig into that throughout the course.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm probably getting too far ahead on what your questions are, yeah.
So how big is Volvo Trucks kind of globally in terms of sales? And then what proportion of that is Australian?
Okay, so I think this year we'll build something like 3,500 trucks in Australia between Volvo and Mack. I think the last year that was a big year. I think it was something like 415,000 or 425,000 trucks sold globally in 2023 or 2024, I think that was. So those sorts of numbers I'm not so great with. The truck detail I'm good with. But in Australia, we're up to 117 electric trucks on road in Australia, like just over 50 of those are this year.
Oh, wow.
So that's where my numbers are good. But yeah, in terms of the business globally, I'm sure about 2 years ago, it was 400 and something thousand trucks delivered. Yeah.
Let's talk about e-mobility then. And so I'm sure it's got its challenges then. So what are the kind of biggest technical challenges then that, biggest technical issues that you've got to kind of work through as
I guess the big thing that there's people much smarter than me over in Sweden that are doing the really technical stuff, like with the batteries, the electric motors and that sort of thing. The technical part that's difficult here in Australia is that making sure they're going to be fit for purpose and how that stacks up versus the diesel equivalent. So our challenges are things like the electrical infrastructure. If the customer's based in an old area and there's not enough power left in the area that they want to put, even if they want to put, say, a new office building in, some more big air conditioning units and things like that, they may not have the electrical capacity on site for that. So challenges like that in Australia is a big one, is making sure that it makes sense for application. Obviously, Australia is a relatively very small population with a massive landmass.
Yes.
So then for Australia is a huge part of the freight task in Australia is like in capital cities or, whether it's in a regional centre like a Toowoomba or Mildura or somewhere like that. So the trucks are in a 10-hour shift, they might do 150, 200 kilometres because they're not going very far. But that's this much of the market here in Australia. A lot of people will ask, oh, yeah, but it's not going to do Brisbane-Sydney or it's not going to do Brisbane-Melbourne, these electrics. I'm like, no, never said it's going to. It's meant for that city stuff. So the challenge is, I think, the perception around it. Same as it was probably good that cars have been around for a long time with electric cars and more people sort of get it.
Yes.
Is that if you live in a regional area and you drive a lot or you're towing things, electric cars probably not going to suit you, right? With customers of ours that do, say, heavy haulage or they're in, they only do, say, B-double work interstate, we're not going to talk to them about electric because we don't have a suitable product. So the challenges are around people's understanding of what it's actually meant for, but then things like the electrical infrastructure, teaching drivers how to drive them in the most efficient way is another one.
Yeah, could we dig into that then?
Yeah.
How would they kind of change their driving?
So the interesting one with the driving bit, so what I started with at Volvo like 4.5 years when I came from the transport industry to work for the OEM, what I was doing to begin with was all around diesel fuel efficiency. And we've got a really good telematics system that can show how the driver's driving the truck, braking, inputs, things like that. So if the driver has really good driving habits in the diesel product, that's going to translate into an electric very well. But anyone who's driven an electric car, which I'm imagining is probably a lot of your listeners, is that it is quite different to a combustion engine. With the trucks, I feel like the driving style is a bit more like a hybrid, like much like a common hybrids on the road, like a Camry, stuff that's been around a while, just in terms of the braking and the acceleration, feels more like that. Mm-hmm. The regen braking in our heavy duty is pretty intense, but the diesel product is good as well. So the guys that are really good at driving the diesels efficiently, generally they're the ones we want to put in the electric. But the important thing is, unlike the diesel where there's another 400 litres spare when they finish their day, we don't have that with the electric. We've got a finite volume, in terms of energy. So if they have been flogging the truck all day, they might not make it home. So that's where we've really got to manage it, because one of our prime movers will do up to 300 kilometres in a day, depending on weights and topography and so on. And we can calculate all of that out. We've got some really good tools to do that. But if the driver is absolutely hating on the truck all day, I'm getting a phone call going, your truck ran out of juice. And then I've got to look and go, well, this is how they were driving it. So that's why it's really important to manage that. It's a really hard thing because of driver shortages and so on, is that often transport companies are leaning towards, someone driving the truck, but flogging it is better than no one driving it.
Yes. Yep.
But with the electric, we can't really take that mentality so much.
Yeah. My mind just went to the kind of labour shortage. Do you get any kind of pushback from your clients saying, oh, my drivers are resistant to kind of changing from a diesel truck to an EV truck?
Yeah. Even operations managers, fleet managers. It's very easy to change their mind when you stick them in behind the wheel. Yeah, because it's like a lot of people, I suppose, that haven't driven an electric car before. It's exactly the same. Oh, I don't want to drive that. Put them behind the wheel and like the instant torque, and it's quiet and you don't have the vibration and so on. It changes their mind very, very quickly. And that's probably one of the most fun things that I've got to do over the last couple of years is either guys that I've known a long time or I haven't known very long, and they have this immediate attitude to, the owner of the business gets them out and, oh, well, we've got this electric here, and it's and, whatever they read on Facebook or their uncle said about it or whatever. And you get them behind the wheel and 5 or 10 minutes, just the attitude changes. And that is hilarious because it's kind of like an I told you so, which is always fun. But it's, from that point of view, it's really amusing. From fleets, once they've taken on the truck, it sounds too good to be true, but it really is. It's more that they then have the drivers fight over who's driving the truck.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, because of, like our product is very good. Like our diesel product is very good. It's quiet, it's comfortable, but the electric is something else again. So it's less fatigue. And when the guys are doing, 10 or 12 hour days, it makes a massive difference. So they've proven to be really popular, the people driving them. The way that the torque comes on as well. So they're just, we haven't really had anyone drive them, whether it's for a test drive or longer term demo, or once it's gone into service. As far as I know, not that I've experienced, haven't really had anyone not like it. Yeah, some of them are a bit indifferent, like, I don't care, that's a nice truck, I'll drive it or the other one, whatever. There has been that, but there's certainly been no negativity once they've driven it.
Yeah. I mean, from personal experience with the EV cars, I can, completely understand what you're saying. Like as soon as you get in with like the torque and the acceleration, they're just so much fun, aren't they?
Oh,
and the comfort levels.
100%. And, for me, like a lot of people, it doesn't suit to have an electric car just yet. But anytime I book a hire car, which is pretty often with all the travel, I try and get usually the options like a Polestar. And I'm a big fan of those. And it makes such a difference, like particularly somewhere like Sydney, where I'm following the navigation because there's only so many places I know where it is. And I've been going there long enough, I should know. But you're following that, you're on the phone constantly, and it's just a much nicer place to be because it's quiet and it's comfortable. You don't have that vibration through it, particularly with, all those highways in Sydney aren't much chop. They're all pretty rough, like our roads are full stop. But that's the reminder for me because driving any trucks that, for me, I get in and out of different ones, electric and diesel, and I don't drive often enough anymore that you sort of get reminded of it, of just how good they are. It's more the car thing.
Yes,
right?
Yeah, because that's social license of...
Yeah, because that's more common for me. It's not like I don't drive trucks a lot anymore. So it's a novelty getting in any of them.
Yeah. And I know we're jumping around a lot. How much is Volvo getting involved in building out of the recharging infrastructure? Do you have partners that you get involved, or do you see a kind of opportunity within a certain area and, leverage off your partnerships with other organizations, or highlight to them that, this is the potential market that could be, could be grown?
I mean, there's two different parts of that, I guess, is in Europe, there's a joint venture between us and two of our two European competitors being Traton Group, which is Scania Trucks, and Daimler being Mercedes.
Yeah.
So they're working on charging hubs for Europe. Obviously, that's not relevant for us, but they obviously realize it's a big deal to be able to start doing, inter-country stuff over there. You're going to need big chargers around to be able to do that. So that's what they're working on over there. As far as here, we sort of get involved to the extent where we advise on what sort of charger the customer's going to need. So if they're only doing, say, a day shift, 200 kilometers, they're only going to need a small charger, not much bigger than what you'd have for your car, to charge the truck overnight. Off you go the next day. If they're wanting to double shift the truck and we're looking at prime movers, bigger distances, higher weights, then we look at bigger chargers. So there's a couple of different charging companies that I have relationships with the people that work there that I get along with well, and they're good because they've looked after our customers. So I sort of say, well, this is what I think you need. Talk to this guy.
Yep.
But we don't have any tie-ups as such, and certainly not in terms of any like charging hubs. So it's something that we stay out of, because it's kind of like, well, we build the truck. That's what we do.
Yeah.
The truck and the servicing and that sort of thing. So we sort of stay out of it in a way, but we support plenty of companies in terms of advice on, well, how much space do you need? How long does it take for your trucks to charge? That sort of thing. So we never shy away from helping industry in terms of that, but we don't get involved any more than in an advisory space, I guess, is probably the easiest way to explain it.
Yeah. And how much does Volvo see the long haul market changing over the next sort of 5 to 10 years, and what the options? I presume renewable diesel is the kind of way to decarbonize that sector. So for the listeners, could you give them an overview of what renewable diesel is, and then how that
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So,
how that's used in your trucks?
And it's for us, it's the multi-pronged approach. So we've got electric, and we've got renewable fuels, and then we've got hydrogen. So the quicker part to explain is hydrogen, which we've got three trucks on road in Europe testing. So that's still early days. So it's a hydrogen fuel cell, which is essentially a range extender for what is otherwise an electric truck. That's going to be something that is probably to market in the next 5 to 6 years, depending on a number of factors. Specifically for Australia, it's going to depend on whether there's the availability of it, which has been all over the place in the last sort of year or so. Then we've got more sustainable fuels, so like HVO, so hydrotreated vegetable oil. So all of our trucks that are built in our factory in Wacol, as of I think it was November last year, are now factory fill with HVO. It's already doing that. It is considerably more expensive at this point in time because it's not mass produced enough. So essentially, that's the well to wheel emissions. So it's more sustainable in the way that it's made. So that's where you're getting the emission saving. But as far as then once it goes into use in the truck, then it's same. To regular diesel. Our trucks, our Mack and Volvo product have both been completely tested. Our Euro 5 engines already on the road, and our newer Euro 6 engines, all tested. They work, they're fine. There's no discernible power difference. Like the driver doesn't notice the difference. You can put HVO in one day, regular diesel the next day, depends on availability. So that's a good one where it's good for Australia because at distances, again, like this, it's so vast. We have a huge number of customers where we've got these trucks are doing 400,000 kilometers a year, in some cases more.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're doing shuttle runs where we've got, trucks are doing 7,500, 8,000 Ks a week, where the truck's leaving Brisbane to go to somewhere like a Townsville or a Cairns. Halfway, the drivers are swapping over at a motel, truck keeps going. So it's the truck that's constantly running 6-7 days a week. So for us, like diesel's going to be around a long time. Volvo's still pouring bucket loads of money into R&D on the diesels. It's not forgotten. We've only introduced early this year our new 17-litre engine, replacing the 16-litre engine, which sounds like a horrible thing to discuss on this podcast, right? I go, bigger diesel engine, but it's more efficient than the old one. It's got more power. It's got a lot more torque, but it's more efficient than the previous 16-litre that replaces, and it's Euro 6, which when you look at the emissions, like in terms of like particle matter, it's so much lower from Euro 5 to Euro 6. So powering something like that off HVO is going to be a big thing here. It's just that availability and therefore the price is what's sort of holding it back being used commonly at the moment. But plenty of customers are asking about it and seeking out themselves to try and get a supply of it.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah. And we've spoken quite a bit on previous episodes about the kind of iterative process of decarbonisation. How do we move organisations down the, the emissions curve? And it sounds like, that's one such a, option for
it is.
Volvos.
Yeah. And I suppose probably like when I spoke at that conference where you found out who I was, whenever that was earlier this year at the Smart Energy Conference. Yeah. And it was, and I, at those sorts of things, and same with talking to our customers, is that it's very much, we've got to be realistic about it and do what we can. So we've got to make sure that it's fit for purpose for our customers, right? Because at the end of the day, we sell trucks. That's what Volvo does and all the things associated with that. It's got to be fit for purpose. So if that customer has an application where an electric truck would suit one out of their truck of, their 50 truck fleet, but the numbers don't really stack up because, say, their electricity is really expensive, or they're in an old area and they can't put a big enough charger in to suit their application. Like, we're not going to force the customer into that truck to hurt a relationship with a customer that buys, say 5 or 10 trucks a year. That's just doesn't make any business sense, right?
Yes.
So it's all well and good putting in the zero emissions truck, but then also we can look at the rest of that fleet And if we can help them with our Volvo Connect telematics system, we can help them save, say, 5% fuel on average across a 20 truck fleet. Well, the fuel saving is sort of like, it's kind of the same as putting one diesel off the road and replacing with electric, right? So it's sort of like, it's not just we've got to go electric everything.
Yeah,
that's obviously not going to be. Yeah, it's not going to be practical, right? And it's, we've got, some customers might get the smaller 13-litre engine for doing heavy interstate type work, and for some it works if it's flat running. But once they're getting into hills, then the fuel economy starts to be a problem. And then you're sort of overworking the engine, and they should have bought the 16-litre engine. So it goes both ways in terms of fit for purpose, right? Is like, are you buying something that's big enough to do the job? Or are we like, it's not just in terms of like the emissions, it's like, is it fit for purpose? Is it going to do the distance? Is it going to have the pulling power and all those things? So that's where we work with a customer to make sure that we can help them as much as we can with driver training and them continuing to monitor their own fleet.
Yeah.
Idle time, that's a massive one. As someone who used to manage a fleet, like that annoyed the hell out of me. Like drivers would pull up and they'd go in to have their smoko or make a coffee, go to the toilet, like stick my head out the door and their truck's still idling. And like, it just drive me nuts, I'd just go and turn them off. And then they think there was a problem with their truck. Oh, my truck's been turning itself off. No, I'm turning it off because it's annoying me, So we've got to look at all those things. And that's what you probably heard me bang on about at that conference, is it's got to make sense. It's got to be fit for purpose. It's got to be fit for the application for the customer.
Yeah, yeah. And if we're looking at the kind of region, cities, what's been the kind of biggest resistance, or what is kind of slowing down the uptake of EVs now then, if we're looking at the kind of more urban kind of market?
I think probably like the price is a big one.
Yeah. Maybe we can talk about that then. Yeah. So in terms of total cost of ownership, what's the comparison between diesel and EV at the moment?
So it very much depends on the individual and what they're using it for, what they pay for power. That's a really critical one. And like we've had, just in Sydney alone, I've had customers paying as low as 9 cents a kilowatt for electricity and someone paying 43 cents a kilowatt.
Oh, wow.
Now, 43 cents a kilowatt, I stopped doing the numbers and said, sorry, mate, like it's not going to
work.
It ain't going to work. Like we're so far away, I'm not going to do the numbers, right? So the electric truck to buy, it is more expensive than the diesel equivalent, but it's cheaper to run. But that cheaper to run depends on what you're paying for electricity versus what you pay for diesel. And the bigger the fleet, the more buying power they have, or maybe they just have a really good relationship with their account manager and they get diesel cheap. But obviously you've got buying power there with the diesel. Then there's the electricity price, so there's that. But then there's a sweet spot in terms of the kilometers that the truck does. So if the truck's not doing enough kilometers, then you're not going to offset with your fuel, we'll say fuel difference, because it's still fuel, right? Electricity or the diesel. So you're not going to have enough of a fuel difference per day to offset the purchase price difference. So it might be 7 or 8 years, it's cost neutral. And then they start to go, well, I don't know if that makes sense. But then if you're doing too many kilometers for that particular truck, then it might be outside the scope of what an electric truck can do in a day. So you've got to be somewhere in the middle where you're doing enough kilometers and your uptime's good enough that it makes sense, but not too many that then we're getting to a point where like, nah, this actually needs to be a diesel truck.
Yes.
So it's not so much that that's a stalling point or a roadblock. It's just that we talk to so many people and we do the exercise with them and make sure it's going to make sense. Like commercially, it's got to make sense. And depending on the person depends on their motivating factors to do it, right? So it might be that whoever they do work for, they're putting their sustainability targets onto them. So then they are being forced to do it. So they might be able to up their rates with whoever they're working for. They might not. So they might look at it and say, well, that one truck is only going to make a margin of this much because it doesn't entirely make sense for it. It's a low kilometer truck. It's hard to justify. We run our fleet to 10 years or whatever it is. And they might go, well, we need to do it with one so that we keep work for 10 trucks.
Yeah.
Or they might be their own sustainability targets. So they are not, where they just go, no, for marketing reasons, we're just doing this. And the bulk of people go, no, it needs to make sense. So there's all sorts of motivating reasons. And then those reasons potentially just knock down those brick walls that would potentially be a problem to go ahead with doing it.
Yeah. And over the course of time, have you seen people more willing to pay a green premium, or has that reduced in recent months or years?
I guess probably it has, I suppose, because, we're selling more than what we were 3 years ago, right? So I guess so. But there's plenty of customers that I spoke to 2 or so years ago. Okay, righto. And then they sit on it. And then they go back to whoever it is that, their big customer they're doing work for. And then they come back might be 6 months later, 12 months later. And quite often with transport people, particularly if it's a family-run business, it's, the owners it'll be on the phone and be like, you won't have heard from them for 12 months. It's like, come and have a yarn to us about these electrics again. Okay. So you're sort of almost starting all over again because something's changed or there's a new motivator or they got dragged to a meeting where it's like, oh, these are our sustainability targets going forward. So, you've got to do it.
So it's kind of pushed back through the procurement kind of supply chain to them.
Yeah. One of our customers, it was their kids, like older kids, like 20-somethings that were going, well, what are you doing about this? So that's what drove them to, oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Volvo do that. And, they buy plenty of trucks from us. And then it was that was the motivator. It's like, well, what are you doing about it? You've got to be seen to be doing it. And then for them, it worked out that the numbers made sense for that particular truck to do it. So there's all sorts of motivating reasons. And then the reasons why they then actually do it. But I don't think it's really so much that the willingness to pay a premium. It's just that it's taken time for
line between the kind of
people getting used to the idea of doing it. And no, there's a lot of people who want to be the first, but then they're scared to be the first. And there's plenty of people who don't want to be the first. So it's like one of our customers that, they know really well has done it. So then it's almost like a keeping up with the Joneses thing. It's like, oh, well, if he's done it, it's working for him. And they've rung them and they're like, oh, yeah, it's good. It's working. The drivers like it, whatever their feedback is. Then I have them on the phone going, yeah, okay, righto. Let's talk about this some more.
Yeah.
So it's that building confidence. And transport people, I think, are very, very, very good at making, I don't know word this. I guess that, there's not too many people who just make knee-jerk decisions. But like the family-owned business, like the retail customers that I mostly deal with, is that they try and make sound decisions and make the decision once and then run with it, right? It's not just, let's just get one of these things and give it a go. I haven't really had anyone who's pushed back against doing the homework as such. That they go, no, we'll just buy one and then we'll just, figure it out.
Yeah, it's a big asset, isn't it? What's the typical life of a truck? Sort of 10, 20 years, is it?
Yeah, well, in Australia, I think the average age of a registered truck is something like 15 plus.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to make that, thoughtful decision rather than just jumping into something. And
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of organisations, rightly or wrongly, they kind of live off instead of the first mover advantage that you sometimes get in markets like the second mover advantage.
Yeah.
Don't want to get caught with a stranded assets or what have you, to let someone else prove it up and then we'll jump in after that.
Yeah, and there has been plenty of that. There's also been plenty though that want to be the first. So we, with all the different like articles that have gone out to media from us or from the customer, it's like first electric prime mover, first electric prime mover in New South Wales, first fridge truck in New South Wales, and it's the first truck that's doing port work or whatever it is. It's some sort of, there's been so many different firsts claims that it's, so they should, like you use any opportunity to promote with business.
Yeah.
They've stumped up and they're the first person in their area. So say they're the first person on the Port of Brisbane or whatever it is to do it. You want to tell everyone that you're doing it, right? I guess it's probably like, you do something good internally and you say you sell a truck. Well, you're going to tell the boss, aren't you?
Yeah.
Right? So it's almost like they're going to promote that they're doing it so that the Port of Brisbane knows what they're doing or whoever their big shipping customer is knows that they're doing it. It's just part of it.
Are there any technologies that either Volvo's working on out of Europe or even more broadly? I don't know if you want to name any competitors that you're particularly excited about, like any big advancements in battery technologies or any thoughts on solid state batteries, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so there's plenty coming, I think, out of Asia in terms of the truck market, just like what we've seen in the car market. And that's great because competition's good, and particularly with something new like this, what it means is that our people in Sweden are going to see that, and we're going to be reporting back and saying, well, this is now entered the Australian market, and so is this and so that. And all it does is it just means that you can't be asleep at the wheel, right? And it's good because, competition's great anyway. So there's going to be more electrics on the road, whether it's European or competitors out of China. That's great because there's going to be more people accepting of there's electric trucks on the road. That's just a fact, right? So that's good. And then it also means that if we have those competitors coming and so someone comes along and goes, well, their truck's no lighter and, say it doesn't go any further, but the batteries are smaller, so the packaging is better. Well, that's feedback we can rely on. Go, well, hey, we lost a sale on this because, so it's driving development. So it's good. Mm-hmm. It's good. It means, Volvo's good in that the R&D is just constant. The rate of them, doing things, but they do things generally properly. We're not always the first to do things. We're the first OEM to market in Australia with electric. And our European competitors are sort of one's just on their first delivery and then the other's not far away, I think. But so we've got 55% market share or something in Australia for electric trucks.
Yeah, fantastic.
I think that's the number, 55, 54, something like that. About half, let's call it that. And, there's plenty of competition knocking on the door. So I think it's good.
Yeah, yeah. How important are government policies in this and incentives, and perhaps even before that? What incentives and policies are in place at the moment? And for the listeners, are they helpful? Do you think? What needs to be done from this point? If you were in the big seat, what would you change?
Oh, so much. So much. So the one that's probably been the biggest, I guess, a roadblock for us is axle weight allowances. So any changes in terms of like legalities and ADRs and so on, like it's time consuming. It just is. It always has been. So it's taken a long time for us to get allowances because these trucks are quite heavy because of the batteries. And then all the computers and the control modules and whatever that run it, that sit sort of where the engine normally would be, is just as heavy as the engine. And then you've got these batteries that are on the chassis rails where fuel tank would normally be. So they're heavy. They're heavy particularly over the steer axle. So what we've needed to maximize payloads and be comparable with a diesel in terms of payload is we've needed to be able to run higher on the front axle. So that then is two things, is getting the approval to do that. But then if we're going off the main highways onto local roads, it's the local council to approve that. A lot of these roads don't hold up when you've got trucks running up and down them all day. And then you go and put a heavier truck on it, makes it even more of a problem. Also, then it comes back to that same old problem, is that it's very hard to maintain roads in Australia because you've got an enormous country with a massive road network, but not a lot of people, there's some figure out there, and I can't remember what it was, but it's like how many dollars or cents, how many cents per kilometre is coming from the taxpayer to pay to maintain roads. When you look at that, you just go, well, how the hell do we even have the roads that we've got, right? Because there's such a massive road network in terms of kilometres, but comparatively not many people to pay for it. So then when we're asking to go, oh, we want to put an even heavier thing down the road all day, it's not like it's a heavy haulage load that's going to, move a transformer down that road as a one-off project. Then something similar might be a month later or 2 months later or something, or something for a building project. This is daily. So that's where we've tried to do as much as we can with truck spec, and the electric trucks, like the prime movers, are quite long, comparable to a normal prime mover. So then our overall length becomes a problem. So it's been time consuming. Like things have been slow. It's not too much stuff has been knocked back, or things that have been knocked back we've sort of been able to overcome. But it's like, the ATA and all these different trucking associations and Smart Energy Council that have really been pushing, that we're all, and Smart Electric Vehicle Council and so on, all pushing for the same thing to drive that development. In terms of incentives, there's not really anything other than the ARENA funding. So the ARENA project, basically the short version of it is there's a number of our customers have got ARENA funding, but it's more a big term or a big picture project. So one of those customers being Team Global Express, who took 36 of our trucks across last year, 36 rigid trucks, and then a competitor's smaller product. I think there was 34 of them. They had like the first dedicated EV depot in the country.
That's Toll Group?
Yeah, Team Global Express.
Yep.
So they did that. And so basically, but that was like a more than 18 months or 2-year project. So they got a pretty big funding to do that, which helped bridge the gap versus a diesel truck. But little mum and dad operators can't do that. They don't have the power of a big sustainability team and a legal team to go and put this in. And the thing with that is that then also for those projects, you've got to show a point of difference of what someone else has done. So the whole idea of it is to promote basically, whether it's electric vehicles or something in that sustainability space, but you can't just do the same as what the other guy did. So that's where it's been hard for like our retail customers, where it's a family-owned business. They don't have access to that. So that's where it's been a bit tricky. So there's no incentives there.
Yeah. Are the government looking at anything at the moment, to the best of your knowledge?
Not that I'm aware of. There's people within our business that deal with government for various different things that are looking at that, but there's certainly nothing that I'm aware of that is going to be, something that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. Is there a solution or a way around the additional wear and tear on the roads, or is it just a case of, if we're going to go down the battery route, this is what we're going to have to?
Well, this is the interesting thing, because we've got our clever engineers to do a lot of work with Ausroads. So what they've figured out is basically our truck at 7, I think the figures were what they were comparing was our truck at 7 ton on the steer axle. So those front 2 tires on the ground at 7 ton on our air suspension with our wide tyre did less pavement impact than a traditional narrower tyre on spring suspension at 6.5 ton.
All right. Well, yep.
So basically what we proved was, it's like, yeah, we've got more weight, but between the bigger footprint of the tyres and the nicer or better, more forgiving suspension, it actually did less damage.
Yes, yeah. And I think those are the stories that need to be told, because you hear someone in the pub and say, oh no, EVs are much heavier, they're just going to smash all our roads up. And, it's like, as a bigger picture kind of thing, it doesn't make sense if then you've got to create more emissions to refix the roads.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was at a hotel bar a couple of weeks ago and I heard someone mention something about like electric trucks or something, and I did have a Volvo shirt on and I just kept my mouth shut. I had my laptop there, I was working, and I think at that point in time I'd probably had 3 beers, and then so I was probably a bit more argumentative, and it was just like, nah, I'm not gonna, because I just at the next table and just like, nah, don't get into it, don't, because factually they had no idea what they're on about. They were generally just pretty negative about the whole thing. I just thought, nah, don't, just obviously having no idea who they are. There might have been people that were good to set straight, or I have no idea who they were, but it's like, nah, bite my tongue. Bite my tongue. It's not, no, now's not the time to get into an argument with someone.
And it's all those kind of 1%ers that you touched upon. Before we came on air, you were talking about the kind of, optimization of people's distribution or what have you. So maybe you can sort of talk to, give the listeners a bit of an overview of some of those improvements as well.
Yeah, and that's probably something like, so my background's as a driver and then into fleet management. And one of the things that I learned from the general manager of that particular business was like, got absolutely hammered on making sure I knew what was going on in the business. So it was like asking me figures that I knew that he'd already looked at the figures for what we'd done in terms of collections and so on, and kilometers done and fuel burn and so on. But he was making sure that I knew it, but it was constantly optimizing those runs so that you didn't have drivers going over one another, or if they were, there was a particular reason. So it was time constraints or something like that, not driving through school zones and things like that. So that got hammered into me. So it's something now that when I look, so when we're working with a customer, and let's say truck A and truck B, and they're going, oh, well, truck A is what we're looking at. That's the route that we're looking at replacing with an electric. Okay, so why do you spend all your time, say around this area, where we are, say Bowen Hills and out to Nunda and Ascot, and then you go to Redcliffe? Why? Like, have you got another truck go there? So I look at things like that to sort of, I look at things to try and improve that way, so we can sort of change it if we can, change it if it makes sense for them. Mm-hmm. So it's going to make it efficient already anyway, but we're making it so that it's more suitable for an electric. It's like, well, is there work that this, say, truck B does that's nearby that would make sense to give that work to the electric truck? And they might say, no, well, because there's time constraints, they both need to be in the same place at the same time. Okay, fine, no worries. But that's what I tend to look at as well. And then also as part of my role is to help the salesmen at the dealerships across the Volvo network in Australia to look at that the same way. And it's just, I suppose, because my background is not truck sales, it's fleet management and driving. So, they have the relationships with their customers. They know how to spec a truck, but I help them to sort of look at it a different way, or help them in meetings with their customers to then explain it all and see what we're looking at, because these customers are getting asked questions they're not used to being asked by their truck salesman. So when you start asking things like, oh, well, where does that truck go today? How many kilometers does it do? Why does it go there? It doesn't make sense when you've got didn't you say you have a prime mover go there? Why does a rigid go there as well? Like, they get a bit put off because, like, why are you asking this? So yeah, you end up finding improvements that way just because it's looking at it a different way.
Yeah.
Which, it's not necessarily always the right thing, but you've got to ask the questions to find out.
Mm. Is there any other messages that you want to get across to the audience, or anything else that you're particularly excited about that Volvo's working on?
I think what is exciting is that we're getting to a point where it feels like the wave's about to crash or break. I don't know what probably is the right terminology for that, but it feels like we're getting to a point where there's more acceptance in the market of it. And it is a really good product. Like, it's great to drive. It's better to drive than a diesel. Like, it just is. And our diesel product is really good. So I think it's getting to a point where there is excitement in the market for it. And, we just want to make sure that it's going to be fit for purpose. We're not going to sell someone a truck that's not. But, the important thing is to ask the questions when we find out. And we work with our customers to make sure that it's going to work. Yeah, so that's probably all there is to it, is we want to make sure that it's fit for purpose, because what it is meant for, which is local distribution work, it's really, really good for it. And it's not just the emissions in terms of what's coming out of the exhaust pipe, it's also then noise as well. So if you're delivering, say, to a little grocer or a little cafe that backs on to residential, well, suddenly you don't have complaints when you turn up at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah, good point.
Because the truck's, obviously it's not silent completely because of brake noise and the doors and such, but it's just all these things that aren't necessarily thought about. So it's good. We're getting to a point where after a good couple of years of, really talking to a lot of our customers and trying to get that acceptance, that I think we're getting to a point where we're getting a lot more inquiry now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
If you had a crystal ball 5 years from now, what do you think will be the uptake of electric? And then maybe because I know hydrogen, if at all, is going to be a lot further down the track.
Yeah.
What would the split be, say, maybe 10 years between, electric, at that point, green diesel and potentially hydrogen?
So let's go with the 3 different prongs that I spoke about, the Volvo's going out. So I think HVO will be, probably the biggest saver as such, like in terms of what our customers, being that we're in the heavy duty market, I think that's going to be the biggest one. The price of that, I think roughly, and this is rough numbers, but I think when we put HVO in our trucks at the Brisbane Truck Show in 2023, I think it was about $6 a litre. We had to import it in, and they were in IBCs in a shipping container and took forever to get here from overseas somewhere.
$6.
I think it was about $6 a litre. For Brisbane Truck Show this year, which was back in April or May, whichever it was, I think it was just over $3 a litre, or maybe $3.50 a litre. So in 2 years, that's how much it's come down. And we've got a lot more customers asking about it. So once it gets to a point where it's cost effective, that'll be a big one. And that's the pretty big emission saving there. I think with hydrogen, it's going to be entirely on if the infrastructure is there for it. That we'll have a product to market, I think, in the next 5 to 6 years out of Europe, which is the latest that I've heard. We're obviously not going to bring it here if there's no infrastructure and it doesn't make sense. Like if someone can't power their truck, it's no use to them, right? With electric, we've got some pretty big targets for the next couple of years, which are in line with what Volvo Group's own emission targets are, because obviously we're doing stuff with the factory and, with our own travel and all these sorts of things as well, but our own operations and recycling and so on. But I think still in Australia, it's going to be a small part of the market still, just basically due to, how sparsely populated the country is generally. But I think now some days I can drive from, say, our dealership at Pinkenbar to our dealership at Wacol, where head office is, and I might see 3 or 4 electric trucks. And that's cool because I sold that. I know what they're doing with that, and it's good to spot them.
Yep.
And I think in 3 to 5 years' time, it'll be a lot smaller distance than that you can drive and see one. And if it's not ours, it'll be someone else's, I think. So yeah, look, I don't think that it's ever going to be something or certainly in the next 5 years, I don't think it's going to be 20% of the heavy vehicle truck market, but might certainly be 10% of what we do. I think is entirely possible. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And we touched upon kind of bringing people down the emissions curve. So yeah,
exactly. And I think we were talking about it before we started, is that drivers or fleet managers that electric, and whatever their opinions are about it, not wanting to drive it, sticking them behind the wheel is great. And sometimes that's how they're convinced to look at it. They just I don't want to do it. We'll stick to what we know. I understand that mentality, but also they change their minds so quickly once they've experienced it. It's almost like with some people that they don't believe it exists until they've actually driven it. It's like, oh yeah, I know. And it's not like Volvo's a new brand to them, right? So we're not new to the market, but it's almost as if, that's not possible. An electric, that much weight, it boggles the mind sometimes. So we just, the best way for us is to get people to drive it, and no one has anything negative to say after they've actually driven it, which is really fun.
Yeah. Do you think to a certain degree that organisations perhaps haven't monitored their usage and the diesel cost and that kind of thing to, like you're saying that you do the optimization modelling and stuff like that? Are there a lot of your customers who aren't that sophisticated that would kind of monitor that? It's providing them with the data of what the options are.
Yeah, definitely. And that was, we've had this software to be able to allow fleets to do this for a long time, both for the Volvo and the Mack product. But it's interesting because I think once then everything got busy. So there was obviously the lull when COVID started, and then there was the peak. So when sort of COVID was at its worst was about when I started at Volvo. And that, like I said, that's what I was doing first. It was amazing to me, basically because I came from a business where we were very big on the fuel and wear and tear and tires particularly. We were really big on that. So to me, that was something that you just did. But it was surprising to me how many customers just weren't on it. But then also, most businesses were so busy that they were screaming for staff, struggling to keep backsides in seats to drive trucks, fleet managers, owners that were regularly having to drive trucks themselves. And the software still requires you to look at it. We make it as easy as possible and show them how to use it. And sure, you can grab the piece of paper that comes out of it and look at it and go, oh, well, I need to talk to Dave and I need to talk to Jane and I need to talk to Bob or whatever, and tell them off for their idle time or whatever. But if that person's been with you for 20 years and they're a solid person, never calling sick, whatever, but they're a bit hard on the gear, you're probably not going to upset them by going, mate, your idle time's, it's not real good, because it's not worth upsetting a driver over that. So that's where it was really difficult for quite a period of time with businesses, because someone who was a bit hard on the gear and flogged the truck was better than no one driving the truck. So that's where it was sort of like I had to go a bit softly with customers, because obviously you don't want to tell them how to run their business. You're just there to help. But also, with driver shortages and so on, you sort of, if people were a real problem and they were doing things that were just inherently unsafe and really like getting to the point where they would have been causing premature damage or wear and tear to the truck, you need to have a conversation with them. But that's something that just, I found that it wasn't a big thing that customers dealt with. But also at the time, like just keeping drivers was pretty hard, that you didn't want to upset them by being critical of how they were doing their job, really.
Yeah.
So it was a difficult thing, yeah.
Mm. We did an episode with Boeing maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, and they've got an online tool that people can change all the inputs and see what the outcome is in terms of what the carbon content is. Like, have Volvo got something similar that you can? Yeah,
we're working on something similar.
Okay, cool.
And things like, so basically for the spec of the truck. So it's not so much the driver behavior piece, because we're pretty good at that. It's more so the truck spec. So like, say if you don't put a bull bar on it, what difference that's going to make? Heavier axles or whatever the spec of the truck is, sun visor. Things like that, higher chassis, because there's different chassis heights depending on what sort of roads you're running on. So yeah, it's something that's being worked on. That's quite a simple sort of tick and flick to determine what the fuel consumption of that should be. Or in a country like Australia, like if you need a bull bar, you need a bull bar. Like there's no getting around that from a, saving downtime point of view. Like it's just a reality of our market. But yeah, it's certainly something that we're working on. When we look at our electric trucks in terms of what they're going to do, in terms of range, we put that in. So we put in like, what's the truck weigh? Does it have an external sun visor? Does it have a splitter like on the bottom of the bumper? And often we won't put those splitters on because it's going to just get ripped off on a driveway or something anyway. And then does it have our new camera mirrors? So is it just a little stalk with cameras on it, or is it a full conventional proper mirror? Not proper mirror, but what has been a conventional mirror for a long time. So we calculate what difference that makes in the aero effect as well.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
And just for a matter of interest, what sort of percentage does it change on the efficiency with the visor and the different mirrors?
It's like percentage. Like it's ones or twos percent.
But all adds up, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But this is where I think where we get into the nitty gritty to really show confidence in what we're telling people, or to give them confidence in what we're telling them, because we put in topography, we put in also the like traffic. So it'll use historical traffic data.
Wow.
So you've got your average speed brought into it as well, but also the temperature, because batteries, depending on what they're in, whether it's a mobile phone or whatever it is, they have an ideal operating temperature. So for our batteries, it's about 25 degrees air temp, I think it is. So in Queensland, Brisbane particularly, great, perfect. Like I think it's like 27 degrees or something outside today. So the truck's not using much of its own power to heat the batteries up to ideal temp or cool them.
Yep.
They're just, which uses less energy, obviously. So we've sort of forecast all of that. So we can determine like a customer here to a customer in Melbourne is going to be very different in terms of energy usage. Because when you start getting down to like 5-degree mornings and you're running around in 5 or less degrees for a couple of hours, that does affect the battery range. So we are pretty good at doing that. Our testing, like us here doing it ourselves in Australia, driving from Waco, Port of Brisbane, doing big loops like that range simulators usually within 1 or 2, 3 kilometers accuracy in terms of what it says we're going to do. So we're very good at forecasting that. The diesels, I think we've got that tool that we're working on that's in terms of, if you have a bull bar, if you don't, and other spec of the truck, different cab types and so on. That's a little bit of a harder one, because usually it's going to be things like a bull bar where they need it. They're going to put it on. But it's interesting because I probably more since working in this space and getting more and more fixated on fuel efficiency, I've become more like aware of when I see stuff. And it's like when you see full drives with roof racks and all the garbage on the top. And it's like, I get it. Like I try and take weight out of my car when it's stuff that I don't use very often, or whatever the items are, So that's something that I've become quite, annoying with. Like I annoy myself when I go, oh no, I don't need that in a car. I'll, take it out. And it's like, it's not going to be like some, an extra drink bottle or a jacket or something, but, jumper leads. I took jumper leads out when I got a new car not very long ago. It's like, I've never used them myself. I test the battery. I'll make sure it's up to date. That's only been used once in a blue moon to help someone else. Now that's weight. I don't need I don't need that in the car anymore. So it's just trying to get our customers to think the same way. And there's plenty of them that do. There's plenty of them that do really clever things that I would have never thought of. But, there's a lot of things that we can do that isn't just let's replace a truck with an electric. There's so many other things that we can do with fuel saving.
And how can the audience follow what Volvo is up to then?
So we post plenty on all of the social media channels, LinkedIn, probably the big one, do a lot on Instagram as well, and on our website. Global website's really good. There is a lot of information on there as well. We tend to go to a lot of the truck shows and things like that. But the main thing to follow is we do a lot of stuff with customer deliveries and, get what their thoughts are on it. We don't really filter it much, like in terms of what they have to say about the product. It's like, it is what it is. And that's going to be different for every customer. So, fuel economy is not the focus for everybody. It's pulling power because they're doing heavy work off-road, that sort of thing. But, we put plenty of that sort of stuff up. We'd like to put customer testimonials up there, but it's, it's all there. It's all on the LinkedIn and the Instagram and Facebook, I guess,
And we'll share your details as well if anyone wants to get in contact with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Regarding electric truck, and if it's not me, I'll be supporting the salesperson who is looking after it right across the country.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah. Thanks so much. Yeah, I found that extremely informative discussion, and it's just interesting to know that not one size that fits all. All those kind of 1%ers are going to add up, and Australia is a challenging environment, so it seems like it does need to be fit for purpose.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Corbin, and wish you all the best.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Exploring Clean Energy. I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. I'm keen to continue to bring you the best experts and most interesting projects. So if you have an exciting story to share, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or email. I'm Andy Marsland, and hopefully see you next time.